Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Monday Night Raw tonight was from the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. And this was Monday Night Raw's go-home show for Survivor Series, which is this Sunday. And my God, this show tonight, what do you want me to say about Monday Night Raw? The show was awful as always. Show was god-awful. This was the worst build to a Survivor Series, in my opinion. WWE did a shit job building towards the Survivor Series. And what do we get on the show tonight? We had Matt Riddle and Big E versus the Usos, which then led to a six-man tag, typical WWE, as always. And then we had Bianca Belair versus Tamina. Like, that's a great match there. We had Queen Zelina versus Nikki A.S.H. and Rhea Ripley versus Carmella. Why couldn't they do this as a tag team match? I don't know. And we had Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor. And in the main event, we saw Bobby Lashley versus Rey Mysterio. But overall, Monday Night Raw tonight was just a piece of shit show. God awful. And you know WWE, with their go-home shows, they do a terrible job hyping up for their pay-per-views. Like I said, this was the worst fucking build to Survivor Series. But before I start the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video that I uploaded earlier today, I did a movie review of The Yearling from 1946. It's a classic film. I loved it. It's a masterpiece with a beautiful story, great acting from Gregory Peck, Jane Wyman, and Claude Jarman Jr. Definitely check out my review of that if you guys haven't seen it. But anyways, let's jump right into the review. So Monday Night Raw opened up tonight with Big E. Big E ended up coming out. He rushed to the ring. Mike Rome ended up doing his introduction. And we're going to get Big E versus Roman Reigns this Sunday at Survivor Series. So Big E ended up getting on the mic, and he ended up saying that a lot of people have their eyes on him since he won the WWE Championship. He ended up saying with Thanksgiving right around the corner, he has plenty of presents to give, including the leftovers. So Big E ended up addressing Roman Reigns. He ended up saying that it was just supposed to be brand versus brand, champion versus champion. He ended up saying that Reigns and his little cousins, the Usos, took it to a place we can never come back from, as they put their hands on, his family, which is, of course, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, King Woods, his brothers in the New Day. He ended up saying now he has to beat their asses like they stole something. And he ended up saying now he has to make sure there are empty Brooklyn hospital beds for Roman. And Big E ended up saying that he has to take a piece of Reigns he will never get back. He ended up saying that is Sunday at Survivor Series. And he was like, this is Monday Night Raw. So Big E ended up addressing Kevin Owens. Big E ended up telling Kevin Owens to bring his lying, treacherous carcass out to the ring so that they can handle business. If you remember at the end of Monday Night Raw last week, Kevin Owens ended up beating up Big E. Kevin Owens ended up turning heel last week at the end of Monday Night Raw, which Kevin Owens works much better at being a heel than he does a babyface, in my opinion. I think we could all agree on that. So Kevin Owens ended up coming out. He ended up stopping on stage. He ended up saying that there's nothing more he loved than to get in the ring and beat the hell out of Big E again. And he will do that in a minute. He ended up saying he needs to address how Big E cost him the match with Seth Rollins. So Kevin Owens ended up going on about how Big E is questioning his authority and integrity, and that he snapped on him last week. Owens ended up saying that he was never lying, but it doesn't matter because Big E accused him, and everyone loves Big E. So that Big E had everyone judging him. Kevin Owens ended up saying everyone judging him can go to hell, including Big E, which the crowd booed at Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens ended up going on about how Big E has everyone thinking he's some bad guy. He's a scumbag. And he ended up saying, so he's going to be that bad guy, but much worse. Owens ended up saying that he's about to break bad on everyone in the locker room and everyone in the arenas across the world. And now he's going to break bad on Big E. Kevin Owens ended up wanting Big E to understand that what happens from here on out is all Big E's fault. Big E ended up saying that they've talked enough. So he ended up calling Kevin Owens to the ring. Kevin Owens didn't come to the ring. He ended up heading to the back. And Big E ended up getting out of the ring. He ended up following. And then Big E was attacked by the Usos. So the Usos ended up beating Big E back to ringside. And they ended up bringing Big E into the ring. They ended up continuing to attack Big E. And they ended up saying that Roman sends his regards. And that we will see Big E on Sunday. So the Usos ended up having words for RK Bro. And Matt Riddle ended up rushing to the ring to save Big E. And Big E ended up joining in. And Matt Riddle and Big E ended up taking out the Usos. Matt Riddle and Big E ended up standing tall in the ring as the Usos ended up retreating up the ramp. And so Sonya Deville ended up coming out. Sonya Deville ended up ordering these guys, Big E and the Usos and Matt Riddle, to get back in the ring. And she kept saying, oh, we're going to have a tag team match. So then out came Seth Rollins. So Seth Rollins came out wearing his Cruella de Vil jacket. And he was dancing on the ramp. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. But overall, this opening segment to Monday Night Raw was meh, in my opinion. And then we had the first match of the night, which was Big E and Matt Riddle versus the Usos. And we had Seth Rollins on commentary during the match, which Rollins on commentary during this match was fucking awful. Rollins was awful on commentary here. And the match started with Big E and Jimmy Uso. They ended up going at it. Big E ended up taking control of the match earlier on. Big E applied the abdominal stretch on Jimmy. He ended up slamming Jimmy and he ended up covering him. And Jimmy ended up kicking out at 2. Jay then came in and he went for the cover on Big E, but Big E ended up kicking out at 2. So Matt Riddle ended up coming in, so him and Jay ended up going at it. Matt Riddle ended up countering with a flip from the corner. He ended up leveling Jay with a kick, and he went for the cover. Jay ended up kicking out at 2. So we had Jay end up beating Big E down, and Jay ended up knocking Matt Riddle off the apron. Big E ended up catching Jay with a belly-to-belly suplex, and Big E ended up dropping Jimmy as he ended up coming in. He ended up knocking Jay from the apron out to the floor. Big E then ended up launching Jay over the announce table, and Rollins' headset ended up getting knocked off, and he stepped to Big E, but he ended up getting dropped. Big E ended up coming right back into the ring. Rollins ended up following into the ring, dropped Matt Riddle, and the referee ended up calling for the bell. So the match ended in a disqualification. So Big E and Matt Riddle ended up winning the match by disqualification. Post-match, we had Rollins and the Usos being down on Big E and Matt Riddle. Randy Orton then came out. Randy Orton rushed to the ring, and he ended up dropping, I think it was Jimmy Uso with an RKO. Orton ended up regrouping with Matt Riddle and Big E, and then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. And right from there, you could already sense that a 6-man tag was coming. And that's what we got. We got a 6-man tag. this match, Big E and Matt Riddle versus the Usos went to disqualification. What a waste of a match. What a waste of time. And then we had the 6-man tag, Big E, RK Bro versus Seth Rollins and the Usos. This match was just random, in my opinion. It was a random fucking match. So the match started off with Randy Orton. He was stomping away on Rollins. Matt Riddle ended up coming in, and Orton and Matt Riddle ended up double teaming on Rollins for a pin attempt. And Riddle ended up taking over on Rollins. Orton and Riddle ended up doing some quick tags. Riddle ended up working on Seth Rollins with some punches and kicks. Rollins then fought out of the corner, started beating Matt Riddle into the opposite corner. Jimmy ended up tagging in, and the Usos ended up double teaming on Matt Riddle. Jay ended up slamming Matt Riddle in the middle of the ring, and Jay was working on Matt Riddle's leg. And Jimmy ended up coming in, delivered a stomp. So we had later on Big E ended up coming in. He ended up delivering a slam and a belly-to-belly suplex on Jimmy. So Big E was dancing over Jimmy. He ended up rushing the ropes, delivered a splash onto Jimmy. So Big E was deciding to go for the pin, but Big E ended up going for the big ending. Jimmy ended up sliding out, ended up stunning Big E with an enziguri. So Jimmy ended up charging in, but Big E ended up leveling him for a close 2 count with the Uranagi. Big E ended up pulling Jimmy to the apron, started unloading with some forearms to the chest. And Big E ended up going to the apron. He ended up running for the big splash, and he got the splash on Jimmy on the apron. And so Monday Night Raw went to commercial. But at the end of the match, we had Matt Riddle and Rollins going at it. Rollins delivered some running elbows to Matt Riddle's head. And then he rolled up Matt Riddle for the win. And there you go. Seth Rollins and the Usos ended up winning the match. Post-match, the Usos were looking to attack Matt Riddle. Orton ended up coming in, and he delivered the RKO on Jay. And so Matt Riddle and Randy Orton ended up standing tall. Big E ended up stalking Jay. He ended up kneeling down, holding his face. And Big E ended up telling Jay to tell his daddy, Roman, that his message was received loud and clear. And Big E ended up saying that he has a return message. So he ended up scooping Jay up, and he ended up saying, "This is for Roman." And then he ended up dropping Jay with the big ending. So Big E was yelling at Jay, and Big E ended up saying that it's on this Sunday at Survivor Series. So that was that. But overall, this was just a random match. It's not leading to anything, in my opinion. So it was just a random match. And then we had Mackenzie Mitchell. Mackenzie Mitchell was backstage with Bianca Belair. Bianca ended up saying that she doesn't make the rules around here. But if Doudrop wants to mix it up, then let's do it. So Bianca ended up going on about how Doudrop keeps putting her nose in her own business. And then Tamina ended up walking up. So Tamina and Bianca had a face-off. Tamina ended up saying that tonight, Bianca is her business. So Bianca ended up saying that she was hoping for Doudrop, but Tamina will do. So Bianca ended up walking off, and she ended up making her way to the ring. And so then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. And then as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Sarah Schreiber ended up stopping Kevin Owens backstage. Schreiber was asking Owens about why he said he would meet Big E in the ring, but he didn't. Kevin Owens ended up saying that he was lying, but because everyone said he's a liar. He ended up saying that he's really a man of his word, and is just being the bad guy everyone says he is. So then Finn Balor ended up walking up to him. Finn Balor ended up saying that he's sorry that he wasn't here to vouch for Kevin Owens last week, and that he also doesn't trust Kevin Owens. Balor ended up saying that he knows Owens is about to leave for the night, and that he was scheduled to face Seth Rollins, and that officials have told him that he will have to face Kevin Owens instead. Of course, because Seth Rollins was just in the match with the Usos versus Big E and RK Bro. So Kevin Owens ended up saying, "Oh, that's bad news for Balor." And that's no lie. So Kevin Owens ended up walking off, and that was that. So we have Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens later on in the night. And then we had Tamina versus Bianca Belair. This was a boring match, in my opinion. This was absolutely fucking boring. Whenever you have Tamina in the match, it's a inducer. So Bianca started unloading on Tamina. She was beating her in the corner. Bianca ended up getting sent to the corner, and she ended up leaping on to the second turnbuckle. She was taunting Tamina. Tamina ended up charging in, but Bianca ended up mounting her in the corner with some right hands. So Tamina ended up charging again, started leveling Bianca Belair with a clothesline. And at the end of the match, we had Bianca Belair end up delivering the KOD to Tamina in the middle of the ring. So there you go. Bianca Belair ended up winning the match. Post-match, Doudrop, who was watching the match backstage, Doudrop came out. She ended up saying now that Bianca has had a match, she must be exhausted. Doudrop ended up saying that it wouldn't be fair for her to come to the ring and take advantage. But after Survivor Series, she will be looking for Bianca. So Doudrop was taunting Bianca. Doudrop ended up backing away from the stage, and she was smiling as Bianca ended up inviting her into the ring, and that was that. But do I give a shit about Bianca and Doudrop? No, I don't give a shit. Overall, this match between Bianca and Tamina was fucking boring. And then we had Becky Lynch come out. Becky Lynch ended up making her way to the ring. She got on the mic, and she ended up giving a shout out to Indianapolis. And she ended up showing us a replay of what Charlotte had to say about her on SmackDown last Friday. And of course, it's going to be Becky Lynch versus Charlotte at Survivor Series this Sunday. And in this segment, Charlotte ended up calling Becky Lynch a fabricated champion, and that there's nothing natural about her. And I saw that segment, and I'm like, what a fucking awful segment. You had Charlotte and I'm going, oh yeah, Becky Lynch will be known as Becky, uh-oh. And then she got the whole entire crowd to go, uh-oh. It was fucking awful. Absolutely terrible segment that we saw on SmackDown with Charlotte. Fucking awful. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This show fucking sucks. So, Becky Lynch ended up saying that Charlotte is out here acting like she doesn't know who the hell Becky is. Becky ended up saying that she is the person who used to be Charlotte's best friend, who rode everywhere with her, was with her for every good moment, and there with a shoulder to cry on when needed. Becky Lynch ended up saying that she's the person who realized a friendship with Charlotte has stipulations, and that you be the star and I be the person in the background. Becky Lynch ended up saying that she's the person who said to hell with that friendship, and that she slapped Charlotte so hard it sent Becky into a different stratosphere. So Becky Lynch ended up going on about how she rebuilt herself to be the top star of the industry, making Charlotte dislike her own self. Becky ended up saying that she will make Charlotte face off with her own personal demons at Survivor Series. Becky Lynch ended up saying that Survivor Series isn't about brand supremacy for her, and that it's now about personal legacy, and that she will beat the ever-living piss out of Charlotte this Sunday. And, there's been backstage stuff about Charlotte and Becky, like their friendship is on the rocks, off TV, from what I've heard. So, and then Liv Morgan ended up coming out. Liv Morgan ended up apologizing for interrupting this weird love-hate obsession thing that Charlotte and Becky Lynch always seem to have. So Liv Morgan ended up saying that Becky just walked away from her last week, and that Liv can't have Becky do that again, especially not after she finally won the opportunity that she's been waiting for. A chance to take the Raw Women's Championship from the person who once admired the most. Newsflash, Liv Morgan is not winning the Raw Women's Championship. So Becky Lynch ended up interrupting. She ended up saying that she only left last week to give Liv a moment because she doesn't get many of those. Becky Lynch ended up saying that she was once a fan of Liv Morgan. She was Liv Morgan's biggest fan. So then Becky ended up showing us a clip from Talking Smack from 4 months ago, where Liv Morgan ended up recalling how Becky said that she'd be champion when she left for her pregnancy, and how she never forgot that, and that she wasn't champion yet, and that Liv Morgan ended up saying that she would love to take the title off of Becky Lynch. So Becky ended up apologizing for getting Liv Morgan's hopes up, and that she had no idea that she underperformed so badly while she was away. Becky ended up saying that Liv can't say she held her down because she wasn't around. She then went on to say that some people have it and some people don't. Becky ended up going on to say that now that she's back, Liv isn't getting her grubby little hands on the Raw Women's Championship. So Liv ended up saying that on behalf of the entire WWE Universe, she thinks we can all agree that Big Time Becky is just a big time bitch. So they end up going at it, Liv Morgan and Becky. Becky ends up going for the manhandle slam. Liv ended up countering that, and she ended up sending Becky across the ring. Becky ended up retreating up to the ramp, holding her arm. Liv Morgan ended up picking up the Raw Women's Championship in the ring. Becky was throwing a fit. She was like, "Don't you dare pick up the title! Don't you dare!" So Liv Morgan ended up holding the Raw Women's Championship, and Becky ended up getting the title back. She was clutching it. She was clutching the title on her way up the stage, and that was that. But this whole segment was awful. It was cringe-inducing, just flat out fucking terrible. And then we have Randy Orton and Matt Riddle backstage. Orton was yelling at Matt Riddle for him always trying to be the hero. Matt Riddle always trying to be the hero and get involved in other people's business, including Omos and now Big E. Orton ended up saying that Matt Riddle only needs to concern himself with their titles and RK Bro. So that's all Orton cares about, is him and Matt Riddle being a team and the titles. So the Street Profits end up walking up to Matt Riddle because Randy Orton was pissed off, and he stormed off because Matt Riddle was, being Matt Riddle, as always, and it frustrated Orton. So the Profits end up walking up to Matt Riddle, and Matt Riddle ended up saying that he needs to think more like Orton. But they say that he should only when he is in the ring. So Matt Riddle and the Street Profits end up doing the "we want the smoke." And Matt Riddle ended up saying, "those guys are awesome." So that was that. And then we had the Street Profits versus the Alpha Academy, Chad Gable and Otis. So the Profits end up coming out first, and then Otis and Chad Gable. And the match was okay, in my opinion. Gable and Dawkins end up starting off the match. They were locking up, and they traded holds. Both guys end up running the ropes. Dawkins end up getting the upper hand on Chad Gable. Dawkins end up delivering a suplex on Gable. And Ford ended up coming in. And Ford ended up delivering a drop kick to Gable. Ford was taunting Otis. He ended up covering Chad Gable, which Gable ended up kicking out too. So Ford was working on Gable's arm. He was controlling Gable. Gable ended up tripping Montez Ford on his face. Ford ended up nailing another drop kick on Chad Gable. And Ford was taunting Otis some more. Dawkins ended up coming in, and him and Ford ended up double teaming on Chad Gable. And he went for a 2 count, which Gable ended up kicking out at 2. Otis then ended up finally getting to the match. Otis ended up clubbing Dawkins to the mat with the axe handle. Otis was staring Ford down. He ended up dropping a headbutt to keep Dawkins down. Otis ended up staring Montez Ford down. And Otis ended up clubbing Dawkins again. He ended up knocking Montez Ford off the apron. So Otis ended up charging at Dawkins in the corner, but he ended up moving, and Otis ended up hitting the turnbuckles. And at the end of the match, you had the Street Profits end up winning, where Chad Gable ended up sending Montez Ford back to the mat. Gable ended up flying with the crossbody, and Montez Ford ended up rolling through, and he ended up holding Chad Gable for the pin. It was a nice reversal from Montez Ford. You know, how Gable ended up flying off the top of the crossbody, and Montez Ford ended up turning that into a pin. You know, that was awesome. So the Profits ended up winning the match. And, of course, we had Gable and Otis. They were seated in the ring as the Profits ended up heading to the back. And that was that. But overall, this was an okay match. And then we saw a video from earlier today where Rey Mysterio ended up approaching Adam Pearce. Mysterio was venting to Adam Pearce. He was frustrated over what happened last week, where Dominic is not being part of the Team Raw Survivor Series team, and that he was replaced by Bobby Lashley because Bobby Lashley ended up defeating Dominic last week. So Lashley is added to Team Raw for Survivor Series, which makes sense. It's like WWE forgot that Bobby Lashley was their WWE champion for the whole year. So Bobby Lashley should be on Team Raw. And luckily, WWE did something right and added Bobby Lashley to Team Raw. You know, he defeated Dominic last week, and now he's a part of Team Raw for Survivor Series. So Rey ended up saying that he and Adam Pearce had a verbal agreement that Dominic would be on Team Raw at Survivor Series. So he ended up asking Pearce if he's a man of his word or not. So Adam Pearce ended up saying that Rey is a legend in this business, and that he needs to stay in his lane and not question what kind of man he is. So Adam Pearce ended up saying right now he's the man putting Rey in a match against Bobby Lashley for later on in the night, which of course was the main event. So, and from what I saw on SmackDown on Friday, Adam Pearce now has Von Wagner from NXT 2.0. I guess WWE called up Von Wagner to the main roster, so now Von Wagner is Adam Pearce's bodyguard on SmackDown. And the only reason why they made Von Wagner Adam Pearce's bodyguard, is because he's a tall man, he's a tall guy. Why? Why is Von Wagner on SmackDown? Is he ready for the main roster? The guy, in my opinion, is not ready for the main roster yet. He should stay in NXT for a good amount of time until we see that he is ready to come to the main roster. But yet WWE brings him up and he's now Adam Pearce's bodyguard. Does Adam Pearce need a fucking bodyguard? Really? What a waste. What a waste to bring Von Wagner to the main roster just to be Adam Pearce's bodyguard. And then we had Nikki A.S.H. versus Queen Zelina Vega. Yes, Queen Vega. I got to do that impression of Zelina Vega because she talks like that as, you know, her whole queen gimmick here, where she's like, well, congratulations, Rhea Ripley. Oh, and Nikki. Yeah, congrats on being there. I mean, why is Zelina Vega talking in a fucking accent? I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. It is awful. But we had Nikki A.S.H. versus Queen Zelina Vega. Fucking terrible match. And I'm like, why didn't WWE do this as a women's tag team match? It had to be one-on-one matches. Why couldn't we have Nikki and Rhea Ripley versus Zelina, Queen Zelina, and Carmella? Didn't it have to be one-on-one matches? Fucking lazy with them. So we had Nikki and Queen Zelina Vega going at it, and then after the break it was Rhea Ripley versus Carmella. And we had, before the match started, we had a coming soon vignette for Veer Mahan. Yes, Veer Mahan coming to Monday Night Raw. More, in my opinion, Veer Mahan coming soon to catering. Because that's where I see Veer going. They're going to debut him as a monster, then Vince, Bruce, or whoever in creative is going to get tired of him, and he's going to be not on TV in catering. That's what I see WWE doing with Veer Mahan. So, but do I really have to talk about this match with Nikki A.S.H. and Queen Zelina Vega? Do I really? We had Queen Zelina end up winning the match. Zelina Vega ended up following up with a code red on Nikki because we had Carmella distracting Nikki. So there you go. Queen Zelina ended up winning the match. Post-match, Zelina Vega ends up celebrating. Carmella ended up joining her in the ring. And Carmella ended up leading through the ropes. She ended up taunting Nikki. She ended up calling Nikki a loser. Rhea Ripley ended up getting ready for her match with Carmella. Rhea Ripley ended up entering the ring. She ended up facing off with Carmella. And Carmella ended up retreating out to the floor. Ended up standing with Zelina Vega. And Rhea Ripley ended up looking on. And Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Rhea Ripley versus Carmella. Of course, Carmella had that stupid, ugly mask on her, which looks fucking awful every single week when she's on. I mean, get that fucking ugly mask off of Carmella. It's fucking ugly. That mask makes Carmella's face look huge. If she takes off the mask, she looks much better. I don't understand why they're giving Carmella a face mask to wear whenever she has a match. It looks fucking stupid. But I'm not going to talk about this match. Rhea Ripley ended up winning. Rhea Ripley delivered the Riptide on Carmella. So there you go. Post-match, Zelina Vega ended up getting on the mic. She ended up calling on her peasants to be silent. Of course, she does her accent, her stupid accent. And she ended up saying, "This fluke victory doesn't change a thing, because Our Majesty and the most beautiful woman in WWE, Carmella, will lead Team Raw to victory at Survivor Series." I shit you not. That is how Zelina Vega is talking with that accent. And she was like, "Well, congrats, Rhea. You won the match. You beat Carmella. Nikki, you're the loser." I shit you not. That is how Zelina talks in her accent there. It is awful. It is absolutely awful. Lose the accent, Zelina Vega. So then Big E ended up approaching Adam Pearce in his office. Pearce ended up talking about how Team Raw needs Big E to come through at Survivor Series. Big E ended up talking about everything he has going on. And Adam Pearce ended up saying that he needs Big E to be above all that for now. Adam Pearce ended up saying that he wants Big E to stay away from Finn Balor and Kevin Owens' match. So Pearce then ended up seeming to threaten Big E with Brock Lesnar. Because Adam Pearce was like, oh, I got 2 words. Brock Lesnar. And so Big E didn't look happy about that. So he ended up walking off there. And then we had Mackenzie Mitchell. Mackenzie Mitchell ended up stopping Seth Rollins. And Mackenzie ended up asking Seth Rollins about being a part of Team Raw. And Rollins ended up saying that he won't be a part of the team. And that he will lead the team to a win. Because that's what he does. Just how he led the Usos to win the match tonight. Rollins ended up saying that after Sunday, he will turn his attention to Big E and that he will take the WWE Championship and then lead Raw to the mountaintop. Yeah, no, Raw's not going to be at the mountaintop. Monday Night Raw is god-awful every single week. It's not going to lead the show to the mountaintop because after that, the show will be just as bad as how it is every single week. Raw is not going to the mountaintop. So Rollins ends up going on about him saying, oh, he's the visionary, he's the revolutionary, he is Seth frickin' Rollins. So Rollins does his laugh, and then walks off. And then that was that. So then we had Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens. Balor ended up making his way out. And then Kevin Owens. And this was a decent match here. So the match ended up starting. Both guys ended up locking up. Balor ended up taking Owens to the ropes. Owens then took Balor to the ropes. He ended up dropping Balor with a cheap shot. Owens ended up stopping away on Balor. Owens then delivered a shot to the back of Balor's neck. Owens ended up dropping Balor again, and he then went for the senton. He went for the cover, which Balor ended up kicking out too. Owens then ended up grounding Balor with a bear hug, and they got back up to their feet. They started going at it. Balor ended up landing a drop kick. Owens ended up rolling out to the apron. Balor ended up going for Owens, but Owens ended up dropping him over the top rope. And they both go out to the floor. Owens ended up going for a powerbomb on the apron, and Balor ended up countering that. Owens then ended up catching a kick from the apron, and both guys end up back into the ring. Owens then ended up catching Balor with a spin slam, and he went for the cover, which Balor ended up kicking out too. Balor ended up fighting up, and Kevin Owens ended up kicking him in the gut. Owens ended up kicking Balor into the corner and delivered a chop. So Owens ended up whipping Balor into the corner, and he then ran into a boot from Balor. So Balor ended up taking Kevin Owens down. He delivered the double stomp to Owens' chest. Balor ended up kicking Owens and tossed him out to the floor. Balor ended up running the ropes. He ended up leaping over the top rope, taking Kevin Owens down on the outside with the big dive. And so Kevin Owens was in the ring, and this was after Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial. Owens ended up going for a rolling senton, and he ended up nailing it. Balor ended up kicking out at 2. So Balor was mounting some offense, and Balor ended up stomping away to keep Kevin Owens down. Balor ended up chopping Kevin Owens in the corner. And Balor ended up blocking the stunner from Kevin Owens, ended up nailing the sling blade. And Balor ended up charging for the corner drop kick, and Kevin Owens ended up super kicking him down. He went for the cover, which Balor ended up kicking out of 2. So Kevin Owens was on the apron. Balor ended up blocking the powerbomb, and he ended up backdropping Kevin Owens onto the apron, which looked like it hurt Kevin Owens there. So Owens ended up catching Balor later on with a pop-up powerbomb, and he went for the cover, and Balor ended up kicking out 2, and Kevin Owens couldn't believe that. He couldn't believe that Balor ended up kicking out of the powerbomb. So Kevin Owens ended up going to the top. He ended up nailing a senton. Balor ended up getting his knees up. Balor delivered a drop kick to Kevin Owens into the turnbuckles. And we had Kevin Owens end up bringing Balor down to the mat. And Kevin Owens ended up hitting the stunner. And he went for the cover. And there you go. Kevin Owens ended up winning the match. But overall, this was a decent match. And Kevin Owens needed this win. I mean, he's been on a losing streak. So this was, a win for him here. He needed this win. And then we had Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber ended up stopping Styles and Omos backstage. And she was asking about what happened last week with Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. Styles ended up saying that Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode aren't even in the same food chain as them. He ended up saying that the tag team division would be a better place if the Usos would take out the New Day for good. No, the tag team division will still be shit as always. Both tag team divisions on both shows are absolutely fucking awful. So Styles ended up going on about how the Street Profits, and he ended up calling them a bunch of goofs. Styles ended up saying that you don't cross him or his own personal colossus. So he ended up mentioning Loki from the Avengers, saying that he has an army. But Styles ended up saying that he has his Omos. So I guess one of them were watching the Avengers over the weekend. Such a great film, The Avengers. So Styles ended up saying that both Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode stole a win from them last week. And Omos ended up grabbing the mic. He ended up saying, tonight, he will make the Dirty Dogs suffer. So they both end up walking off. And then it cuts to Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode backstage. So they end up cutting a promo on Styles and Omos. They were comparing Styles and Omos to Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins. So yeah, I guess they were watching the Avengers and Twins over the weekend, so they decided to mention those movies in the script for Monday Night Raw this week. Wow. How creative. How fucking creative. And then we had Styles and Omos versus Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. This was awful. This was absolutely boring. Whenever you have Omos compete in a match and he gets in the ring, he is fucking terrible. Omos is terrible in the ring. He's the great Khali of nowadays. That's all I see when I look at Omos. He is the great Khali 2.0. So the match ended up starting. Roode and Omos started off the match. Omos ended up getting over the top rope. He was staring Robert Roode down. Omos decked Roode and leveled him with a clothesline from the corner. Omos then delivered a running backsplash into the corner on Roode. So Omos was continuing to dominate, and Ziggler was reaching for the tag. Omos ended up scooping Roode up, dropped him face first into the top turnbuckle. Omos ended up challenging Dolph Ziggler to tag in and face him. So Dolph Ziggler ended up tagging in. Dolph Ziggler ended up ducking an attempt. He jumped on Omos' back with a sleeper, and Omos ended up slamming Ziggler down to the mat. Omos ended up leveling Dolph with a clothesline. Omos then ended up pressing Dolph onto his shoulders, lifting him up, slamming him down to the mat. Styles ended up tagging in. He was waiting to deliver the phenomenal forearm. Styles ended up flying in from the apron. Dolph ended up getting back up, taking him right back down with the forearm. And Styles ended up covering, and that was that. Styles and Omos win the match. Overall, terrible match, squash match. Moving on. They did announce that it's going to be Damian Priest versus Shinsuke Nakamura at Survivor Series this Sunday. Of course, non-title match. So we're going to be seeing that at Survivor Series. And then we had Sarah Schreiber. Sarah Schreiber ended up approaching Bobby Lashley backstage. Bobby Lashley ended up saying that Dominic should have never had a spot on Team Raw. He ended up going on about Rey Mysterio, says that Rey wants no part of him. And the same goes for Team SmackDown. Bobby Lashley ended up saying that after he's done beating Rey tonight, and Rey licks his wounds, Rey can come to the Survivor Series and watch from the apron as he runs through Team SmackDown. Lashley ended up saying that if anyone has a problem with what he says or does, he's not hard to find. So that was what Bobby Lashley had to say. Main event. Rey Mysterio versus Bobby Lashley. So Rey Mysterio ended up making his way out with Dominic. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. And when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we saw a recap of what we saw last Friday on SmackDown. And we saw how Bobby Lashley ended up dominating Dominic last week, where he defeated Dominic to take his spot on Team Raw. So Lashley ended up making his way down to the ring. MVP was not on the show tonight. It was just Bobby Lashley coming out by himself. So Lashley ended up staring down both the Mysterios. And we had Rey and Lashley get ready to go at it. And the match ended up starting. Rey ended up ducking Bobby Lashley, ended up hitting him from behind. Rey was dodging Bobby Lashley, and Lashley ended up grabbing Rey, scooped him up on his shoulder, and Rey ended up scrambling to the top turnbuckle. Rey delivered a seated senton from the top onto Bobby Lashley. Rey ended up charging at Lashley, but Lashley ended up leveling him with a big boot. Lashley ended up dropping Rey, mounting him with some left and rights. And Adam Pearce was watching the match from backstage. Lashley ended up waiting for Rey to get up for the Hurt Lock, and Dominic ended up getting on the apron, started taunting him. Rey took advantage, and he ended up coming from behind. He ended up sending Bobby Lashley out to the floor. Rey ended up sliding under the bottom rope out to the floor, and Lashley ended up catching him on his shoulders. Lashley ended up looking to run Rey into the ring post, and Rey ended up kneeing Bobby Lashley, quite a few times, and he ended up sending Lashley into the ring post with a Hurricanrana. So Rey ended up keeping fighting, and he barely hit the 619 from the ring to Lashley on the floor. So Rey ended up sliding, he ended up nailing a splash to the floor on Bobby Lashley. So Rey ended up going back in, launched himself in the ring out to the floor, and Lashley ended up catching him and tossed him into the barricade. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, and Bobby Lashley ended up sending Rey into the corner, started working on him, and Lashley was dominating the corner, and Adam Pearce was still watching backstage. Rey ended up fighting back. He ended up kicking Bobby Lashley as he charged in. And at the end of the match, we had Bobby Lashley ended up powering up. Rey was in his arms, and Bobby Lashley ended up going into the Hurt Lock. He locked it in on Rey. He was ragdolling Rey in the middle of the ring, and the referee ended up calling for the match. So Bobby Lashley ended up winning the match. Post-match, we had Dominic end up coming in to check on his dad, Rey. Adam Pearce was backstage, and Sarah Schreiber ended up asking for his final thoughts on Survivor Series. So Adam Pearce was like, if he can borrow the mic, and he ended up walking out to the stage. So Adam Pearce ended up coming out to the stage. Adam Pearce ended up saying that it's his job to make sure we have the best competition possible at Survivor Series, which is why it pains him to say, for the well-being of Team Raw, but more importantly, for the well-being of Rey Mysterio. So Adam Pearce ended up saying that he has no choice but to remove Rey Mysterio from Team Raw. So Adam Pearce ended up saying that his replacement will be named later. So Adam Pearce then ended up heading to the back. And then Austin Theory ended up coming from behind. He ended up dropping Dominic with the ATL. So Austin Theory ended up going to take a selfie. And then Adam Pearce came back out. Adam Pearce ended up saying that he likes Theory's style. And so Adam Pearce ended up announcing that Austin Theory will be replacing Rey on Team Raw. So Austin Theory ended up celebrating. He was taking a selfie over both Rey and Dominic. And that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. So Rey Mysterio, no longer on Team Raw, replaced with Austin Theory. So that was that. But Bobby Lashley versus Rey Mysterio, it was an okay match. But overall, this Monday Night Raw was horrendous. The build to Survivor Series is absolutely fucking terrible. And do you all know that Survivor Series is this Sunday? As to how WWE is building this up? No. You probably all forgot that Survivor Series is this Sunday. Because that's how WWE is. They don't build, right for their pay-per-views. They give you the worst builds to their pay-per-views. And it makes the fans forget that there is a pay-per-view on Sunday, whether it's Survivor Series or the Royal Rumble or Money in the Bank. They put no effort into their go-home shows. And it's been like that for a while now. It's like they don't care. They just don't care. But that was Monday Night Raw tonight. This show was absolutely horrendous. It was god-awful. Fucking terrible. But anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's Monday Night Raw. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoy this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up. Comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out my movie review of The Yearling if you guys haven't seen it yet. So, until then, I'll see you all later.